I'm really looking forward to this episode because I feel like it's extremely applicable. We've talked about routine, and this time we're actually talking about how to actually not burn out while you're keeping at the routine. You're really grinding hard. So, we talked about staying productive throughout COVID. We talked about how to reset yourself before COVID and set goals and how to get into a routine, get through a morning routine. And now we're covering the other extreme end of this, which Sean and I often run into, or if you're someone that works and trains at the same time, it's how to reset yourself, how to stay passionate, how to keep that passion alive. And then once you do hit that reset, how to not burn out again. Very applicable right now, isn't it, Sean?
I definitely can attest to that. And I think that you and I have quite the experience in burnout. And so we we have a good understanding of what it feels like. And we also have been able to learn the best ways to avoid it. Best ways to kind of tell when it's about to happen, and then if it does happen, how to bounce back and come back into a good flow of life, training, work, and that kind of stuff. And I think this is a really good topic because it's easy to get, not that's easy to get into a grind, right? It takes a little effort, obviously, but once you get into a grind, you feel like you can't stop. You just have to like keep going. You have to keep pushing. It's the whole compound effect. I need to be putting in work every single day. And it's a good mindset to have, especially as a fighter, to constantly be putting in the work, putting in the effort, making sure you're sharpening your tools. But when it comes down to it, you need your body to rest. You need not even just your body, you need your mind to rest too, because sometimes it can get so easy to just kind of be going through the motions, which I talk about a lot. I'm a big quality over quantity guy. And when it comes down to it, you have to be intentional in the things that you do. And it can be really easy to lose intention and just be fucking doing it for the sake of doing it, which sometimes can be good. Like we talk about just showing up to training, and ideally you have some type of intention behind your training session. But if you don't, you're still showing up to training, and that's good. But if you keep doing that over and over and over again, you're just going to be like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point of it all? It's really easy to hit this overtraining part as well. And like the overtraining is both a physical and mental thing. And I think with COVID specifically, a lot of people are probably in some type of state, or have been, or might be potentially going into some type of state of burnout in one form or another. I know I've been constantly going back and forth with this, as I'm sure you have as well. Why don't we talk about a little bit what brought this topic up? Like, why was this at the forefront of your mind? What have you been going through recently that has kind of led to this idea of figuring out how to overcome this burnout and overwhelm?
Well, I think I had a weekend that I've never had before where I was able to do work throughout the entire day, which I really enjoy doing, just batching a ton of work. You know, we always say like, oh, Saturday, Sunday's going to come. I'll just catch up on everything and I'll do everything in bulk. And then that's usually where that burnout comes in. And I feel like I just hit this stride where I was out. We went to Bangkok. We completely changed our environment. We worked from morning to night, but took those actual breaks where you step away from work and stretch. You step away from work and go outside and all the things that you're supposed to do and people tell you to do. And it was one of those, it was a peak performance that we read. And it talks about how the mind at a certain point just hits this wall and work becomes very inefficient. And it's really important to like mobilize your body, get the blood flowing again, reset yourself. And I feel like it was the first time that I hit that type of stride. And it was forced because I had a fight on Friday and we bought the tickets. We spent the money to go. And unfortunately, COVID times call for desperate measures. And the promoter has been ripping some fighters off here in Thailand. And we ended up pulling the fighters from the card, not to support that kind of show. And I've been training for over 2 months full time for a fight. And as you know, camps out here are usually 3 weeks to like really hit it hard, hit for 3 weeks. I've been hitting it really hard full time for over 2 months. And especially these last 3 weeks doing big Buddha run, trying to win every session. And I had a last hard sparring session. And, you know, you set your mind to perform, and then fight falls through. And a lot of people are like, fuck, why am I doing this anymore? Kind of what you talked about. And not to get myself into that mode, I just hit this reset where it's like, I don't even have the option of showing up to the gym, because I know if I just took a few days off, I'd feel guilty, and it's right there at my disposal to be able to go. And I feel like that's usually what I do is when it comes to work, when it comes to strength and conditioning, when it comes to Muay Thai, if I have it at my disposal right next to me, I get frustrated with myself for not doing the work. And then I just grab at it again, become more inefficient, become more angry and emotional. And it just goes into a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's this like paradox of like you feel like you need to be busy no matter what. And you need to be, I mean, it's a good mentality to have to constantly be like improving and growing and stuff. But then it
Would you say that your experience has come and you would actually recommend that people hit that so they know where that limit is? Because I know some people that for sure have never even tested that point, and that's the first thing they probably should do.
Yeah, I mean, like you don't even want to necessarily do it purposefully, but you want to just be training hard and training consistently. And then at some point, you're going to learn your limitations and you're going to learn how far you can push yourself and everything. It's the whole concept with like, how do you know when you're overtraining? Well, you fucking overtrain and then you have a gauge of what to work off of, you know? And it's the same idea with burnout. Like, how are you going to know when you're burnt out? Well, you have to actually experience for yourself before you actually can do something about it. Is it fun? No, but it's something that you have to kind of adapt with, especially in the fight game. But this is with life in general. I'm sure a lot of people listening might not even be fighters, but when it comes to training or work or family or whatever aspect of life that you find yourself constantly in and day out, it's really important to be able to take a step out of it, gain a different perspective, and reset your mind and body so you're able to get back into it with a renewed sense of purpose and energy. Yeah, I think it's important to experience it. I mean, we can talk about it all day, but until you actually go through it, it's kind of the same idea of fighting. Like until you actually fight, it's hard to really get a real understanding of what fighting is like until you actually get in the ring and throw down. The same concept goes for burnout. And I think it's really important on what you touched on is that like changing the environment, changing the scenery. When you start to feel this, just like I know I can tell some things, some signs of when I'm getting burnt out. Most of it comes with like just like resentment towards training, resentment
Mhm.
towards work, resentment towards like everything essentially. I'm like, all right, if I'm like really resenting what I'm doing, chances are I'm just like banging my head on the wall over and over again and not stopping it for a second to realize, oh, I'm banging my head on the wall. And so I think it's important to kind of take, I mean, one thing that I am a big proponent of is a morning routine because it allows me to have this time for myself where I'm able to reflect, sit in stillness, and kind of get a different perspective on the things that I'm doing. If I don't have my morning routine, then I'm much more likely to just go through the motions of the day, not be mindful of what I'm doing, not be intentional about what I'm doing. And then it's really easy. It's almost like I'll hit burnout a lot faster. Is the morning routine like the godsend, like save all? No, like I still hit burnout because I try to wake up early and do this thing every day, right? But in the end, it like the meditation that I do every morning, the
Mm.
time I spend just with myself every morning out in nature, going for runs or whatever it may be, it helps me just put things in perspective a little bit more. Whereas if I just wake up and go into doing shit, I wake up and just go to training, or I wake up and just start doing work, or if I wake up and just like don't and check my phone and just go on social media, it is so easy for my mind to be clouded and uncertain about the things that I'm doing on a regular basis. And so the morning routine, at least for me, has been like a really good way to stay grounded and to stay just mindful of what I'm doing. Do you have a similar like philosophy in regards to, I know you're someone who likes a good morning routine and everything as well. Is there anything else that you find that you do that helps you stay grounded and helps you gain this perspective? So when you're getting towards this state of burnout, you're able to kind of be an observer, if you will, on like, oh, I'm getting towards burnout.
I think I do a mental checklist, and I think some people can sit down and physically do one listening to this to see if it's actually burnout that's coming, or is it just the lack of routine and the things that you should be checking off that you're not checking off, meaning proper sleep. Okay, am I sleeping enough at least 8 to 9 hours a day? Am I deloading stress, meaning what you said, meditating, doing yoga? If I know I'm getting enough sleep, I know I'm putting the right things in my body. I know that I checked off yoga twice this week. I meditated this week. I read this week to de-stress, and I'm still feeling that same exact way. Then that's a good sign that I'm actually hitting that burnout. I'm starting to overclock. And I think we can't objectively say that we're actually hitting it unless we do check those things off. So if you're someone that's looking at this more objectively and like how to tackle it, I think that's a good way of doing it, to be able to set that checklist of all those things and whether you are actually checking every single box. And then if you are, then you can honestly say and sit down with your coach to speak to them, or speak with yourself if you're someone that works for themselves. I find that to be the most difficult portion.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to be like your own, I don't know, guidance counselor in a way. You know, you have to be able to like have that outside perspective. And I mean, I guess that kind of brings up another point, is having an environment of people, a support system of people around you who kind of like know you almost better than you know yourself in a way. Like Liz, for example, she knows well before I do when I'm getting to a point of burnout. And she goes, Sean, maybe you should like take a break. I'm like, nah, fuck that. Like, I'm feeling good right now. Like, I'm just gonna keep doing it, you know? And then sure enough, in like a few days or a week or whatever it may be, I'll hit that wall. And so I've made it a
You
point.
feel like it's pretty accurate most of the time?
Yeah, most of the time. I'm also very stubborn. And so like I'm like, I'm not fucking hitting burnout. Like, no, you're hitting burnout. Like, I
It's a
can.
challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's hard to not have the ego get in the way and be like, she don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Meanwhile, we've been together for 10 years, so she has some insights on my habits of, and she's seen me go through overtraining and burnout on numerous occasions. So she has some idea of what I'm going through, and the signs of when I'm getting to this point. Usually I'm more irritable. That's the main thing. Usually, it feels like I'm cutting weight almost in a way, you know, where I'm just like, oh, I just hate being around people and everything, and that's definitely a sign. But I want to go back to the change of scenery and the change of environment. I think that is so crucial, and I know it can be hard in COVID times, but it doesn't need to be anything as drastic as like flying to another city or state or country or whatever. It could be just like spending a day in the park, or spending a day at a different hotel, or get an Airbnb for the night, or just anything just to shift the environment around you. Because recently, like, we live on Copenhagen, right? And everyone that we know has essentially left Copenhagen. And so it's been hard to get into like a diverse enough routine where we're feeling like not every day feels like the same fucking thing. And so
Yeah.
we made it a point to like be doing different things. We're going to different types of classes. We're renting a hotel like every weekend because the deals are ridiculous. Like, it's crazy how cheap things are right now. So we're
And
making
you're
a
playing
point.
touch butt in the park.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing the Edo Portal, animal movements and stuff. I've been taking a little bit more yoga. I've been just trying to switch things up because it can be really easy to get into this monotonous grind of the day to day, and it's important in some aspects, especially when you're training for a fight, to embrace the monotonous grind. But after the fight or after the training camp or whatever it may be, you need a reset. And I like how you were saying before we jumped on the podcast was like how it's kind of a good analogy is like the strength and conditioning, right? Like you need to have those deload weeks. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Like how are the parallels of like training, strength and conditioning and burnout like right alongside each other?
Well, I think the way that it is programmed, it pretty much sets you up for peaking your body by a certain date and then deloading it so that way you can start the next phase. And life is often this way as well, right? Like you have some of your one-on-one classes, whether you're in college, and then throughout the semester things get harder before you have your midterms and finals, and you have these checkpoints. And without the checkpoints, it's really hard to see where you're at. Like rarely do we have tasks where it's okay, here's a task, and then 4 months later you have to hand everything in. Like we have to have these little checkpoints and checks and balances in between to be able to see where we are. And like, okay, do we have to hit it a little bit harder? Do we have to study a little bit more, or do we have to pull back? And that's what the strength and conditioning work usually is we talk about Don Heatrick and the way he programs these strength training routines from phases of conditioning and strength and power and speed, and one builds up to another, so that way you don't hit this burnout. Like you lay a really strong foundation in one, so that way you don't get injured, and the muscles, the body is ready. Like if you went through the first routine, you did the first month, and you did every single workout, then you are going to be ready for the next. And it uses mathematics, and making sure that you're hitting the right numbers. I remember hitting the first weekend, it was feeling like kind of light, and in my head I was thinking, man, I'm just going to put more weight on here. I'm not going to listen to a program because I feel like I can do more than this. But there's a strategy to it. And someone in the comments was asking, a lot of people that I watch can do 5 kicks and 10 kicks straight on the pads without burning out, and their legs are conditioned enough, and I can't do that. What makes the difference between the guys that can do that and that can't? And honestly, I used to watch the Thais and think that it is their size, because I am over 80 kilos, and I'm sure it is a little bit easier when you're a lighter fighter to do those sets of 20 kicks, 20 kicks, 20 kicks, 20 kicks. But man, the difference that I've seen training here in the consistency and kind of like building and peaking, and then having these more technical sessions in the morning, the consistency in throwing 2, then we do sets of 2 and 3, but every day we do hundreds of kicks, and we do this for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we go back to it the next week. And the trainers do a really good job of almost, I don't know whether it's planned or not, I do see Eddie with a notepad, but they pretty much make it harder every single week. And especially if you're a fighter, they look at you, how many kicks can you do? They kind of watch over your shoulder and can see that 20 is becoming easy. So they make you do sets of 50 at the end of training, and then you do 4 sets of 50. And I remember the trainer walked up to me, and he can see my leg isn't breaking down yet, so he pushes me to do 300 kicks at the end of training. And building that consistency over time, I think is what really makes the biggest difference. And peaking it, just as we said, like week 1 will feel super easy. You want to leave some in the tank, but it's pretty much getting the body ready through these movements where you're not so sore going into week 2 that you can't push it. Then week 3, you're actually testing the maximum effort that you have. And then you can't do that over and over again. Like every week, you can't have infinite growth. And because then everyone would be able to deadlift 1,000 pounds by the end of the year, right? So you have to tone it back down, get back at it again, but just a little bit harder in that next phase. How have you found the programming to be?
I've been enjoying it quite a bit just because of the structure of it, and I think it's important to have that same style of structure in other facets of your life. It's great that Powerhouse has this build up with like the kicks and like the conditioning, just similarly to Don Heatrick has the build up and the progression over a period of time, as opposed to constantly just running on red and just going as hard as you can. You can't train as hard as you can every day, otherwise, it's just not sustainable. And if you want to be in this for the long run, not even just Muay Thai, if you want to be in anything in the long run, it's about sustainable, consistent action on a regular basis. And I think one thing you also have to consider is like embracing burnout for what it is, and knowing that like burnout is kind of like a good thing. That means you're pushing yourself. That means that you're challenging yourself. You're pushing yourself past normal limitations that you might not usually be used to seeing. And so every time you hit burnout, I feel like it's almost like a shedding a layer of yourself in a way. And now you're kind of callousing yourself for the next time that you hit the burnout. And then you're kind of just consistently doing that. And like, do you want to hit burnout? No, not necessarily. Like, obviously you want to be feeling good physically and mentally as much as possible, but if you're in a fight sport like Muay Thai, there's going to be times like that. And like, whether you fight or you just train consistently, or if you're just someone who has high standards for yourself and you're always trying to push the envelope a little bit more for your work, for your relationships, for your training, for outside factors, I think it's really important to know that like you're gonna hit burnout. It's all good. Take it for what it is. Learn from it. See how you can adjust from it and how you can, a ideally avoid it next time while still pushing yourself. Because that's another thing too, is that like you don't want to be like overly, it's a fine balance. You don't want to be overly cautious where you're like, oh, I don't want to hit burnout, so I don't want to train too hard today, kind of thing. But at the same time, if you're feeling kind of shitty, you don't want to have your ego get in the way, like, oh, I'm just gonna train hard anyway. And it's this fine line that a lot of fighters struggle with, is like, am I actually injured and do I need a break? Or am I just being a bitch? I need to learn how to push myself. And 99% of fighters just think that they're being a bitch and they need to keep pushing themselves. And like, I know I've been there. I know you've been there. And usually it's just that masculine, aggressive, ruthless energy is just like, nah, just push through it, push through the pain. And it's important to learn how to do that, because in the context of a fight or the context of training, like, you need to learn how to push yourself past normal limitations. Like, if you're just in a fight and you're like, all right, maybe I'm pretty tired right now, like I'm kind of hurt, I think I'm feeling burnt out right now, I'm gonna take a break. No, you like can't do that, right? You can't train yourself to do that. And so we're constantly training ourselves to push ourselves past these burnout phases, and it's hard to know when to navigate to kind of put the brakes on a little bit, or to put the foot on the gas pedal a little bit more. But the best way to learn this is just by trial and error. I mean, like, the experience is like the best teacher. And so you just really have to learn it from yourself. We can be preaching everything that we've learned through our experiences and everything, but it could just be falling on deaf ears until you're actually experiencing it for yourself. Because I know me personally, I've been told so many things, so many great pieces of advice I've heard in the past. I'm like, oh, that's cool, and then I won't even listen to it. And then I'll go and do it. And like, and then I'll fuck up and be like, oh, that's what they were saying so long ago, what I should have been doing.
That's
And
life.
it's like an epiphany, you know? But meanwhile, I was told it, but until I actually did it, it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are treated that way as well inside the gym environment, even inside of work. Later on, when you have the more experienced workers or you have the more experienced fighters, I think they have a little bit more seniority and influence to kind of say and communicate, how they feel, rather than the people that first entered the gym. They're having their first 5 fights or so. It You should just be listening to your coach most of the time. That they know a lot better than you do, and if you need to dial it back, then most of the time they will do it for you. And I see that in the gym here. I see guys that could be showing a little bit more effort, and the coaches treat them completely different than the other guys on the team, that they have to tell to be like, hey man, if you really want to take a day off, you probably should. And then the other guy looks at him and be like, man, why is coach talking to Jake that way. Like why is he being so nice to Jake? But to me, he's yelling at me to get my ass in the gym and that I'm late by a minute and that I'm not running enough, you know? And I think you should just focus on yourself, because this is something that you're going to come across, especially when you do something long enough, is you're going to experience people getting special treatment, but it's not that special. It's earned. It's seniority. It's earned through experience. It's earned through trial and error. People can tell when uh, you've been through the fire, like as you explained, is just trial by fire, and you're going to hit burnout a number of times before you realize what's going on. And that's actually what forced me to actually fly to Bangkok. I actually didn't want to go to Bangkok. I have a similar view of it as you do. It didn't excite me to have a vacation in the city while I'm here across the street from a beach. So, I could have stayed home, but I just wanted that change of environment. But the main thing that happened is that I had a few sessions at the end where my bicep tendon ended up flaring up really bad again, and my neck got locked up, and my left shoulder, I literally couldn't lift it really to block. I would just swing my arm up to block. And I had my last few sessions telling myself, man, I'm fighting on Friday. I'm just gonna push it. I'm just gonna run this shit into the ground until I earn my days off now before the fight. And so I did that. And then I was like, okay, here comes the fight. And then they said no fight. So then I go, well, I got to get back to the gym and train for the next one then, because it's like starting camp all over again, right? And I went back in, and oh man, it's almost like that feeling where you're in a fight. So I broke my hand in a fight before, and I knew it was broken, but I said, I'm going to keep hitting with it for the chance that, I knock him down again or I finish the fight, and it's worth it in that moment. But the second that like that high wears off, the adrenaline wears off, and then you feel it, you're like, oh man, this is bad. Like, this is bad. It was the same thing that lasted for a couple of days where I'm like, well, I'm just going to ignore this pain. I'm going to ignore everything that's hurting because I only have 2 days. Then I get 2 days of rest and I can fight. And then the second that I learned I don't have the fight and I took the next morning off, I was like, oh man, this is bad. I had to have Mia put on my backpack for me. I couldn't lift my bag with my left hand to get to training, but I was going to training anyways. So yeah, that's my story when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because it's so good that you're able to push yourself past these limitations that we were just talking about, but at the same time, it's like also kind of uh, obviously physically hurting you a little bit as well. But it's something that as a fighter you have to learn how to kind of push through. And yeah, I think that you're able to be a little bit more observant, because I think that with like your meditation practice, with having more time in stillness, if there's one book that I would recommend through this entire
I'm
episode,
rereading it right now.
Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. It helped me in a time when I was feeling major burnout, one of the worst burnouts I've experienced. And then reading that gave me a perspective shift on the importance of not just like rest in regards to like sleeping and like laying on the couch and watching TV, but like stillness, like intentional stillness, whether it's like meditation, whether it's a moving meditation of like painting or a hobby of some sort that is kind of out of your realm of normalcy. I found that is like really important. And then when you get like these historical references, how like Winston Churchill, who was at the forefront of World War II, and he still found time to find stillness. It's like, all right, if Winston Churchill during World War II, well, obviously he didn't have as much time for stillness during World War II as before and after, but that's that's besides the point. But if he's able to find stillness and find time for leisure activities, then I should be able to do that too. But I'm probably similar to you, Paul, in the fact that like I try to make all my activities relevant to my skill set, whether it's like business or training. And so even when I read, I continue to try to find a book on fiction that I can like. I read Unbroken, which it wasn't fiction. That was a great fucking book, by the way. And then I watched
Mhm.
the movie. The movie did a good job, but there was obviously a lot of parts that were missing. But
Yeah.
I digress. The main idea is that I think it's really important to have these parts of your life that are kind of completely unrelated to your goals. And by them being completely unrelated to your goals and to like your training and to the main parts of your life, it's actually going to benefit you because it's going to help you avoid this burnout in the long run because you'll have this time to re-energize, to feel refreshed, and to just have like a new sense of energy when you get back at it. Is there any type of leisure activities that you've added to your regular routine at all, or is that something that you're still trying to figure out and balance?
I feel like I need to maybe separate it out from Muay Thai a bit more, but I've had my love for video and photo just really come back in a way. Just really curious. I've been taking the full-time filmmakers course, and just for leisure activity, I'm learning how to do like real estate video and different things like that, just because I'm curious about how to shoot in different lighting situations. Not even because I would never even want to do it because it's not a very creative way of doing videography. It's more of like a good consistent way to get paid doing videography. But just because I'm curious, I'm curious to learn like how to light things in different situations, which is a terrible example on this podcast right now. I'm trying to figure out I'm going to get the cam link situation up and running probably soon.
Sweet.
And it's been fun, and just shifting more to like creating media and doing it for the passion of it, and reading fiction. Those are probably my two main things, is reading fiction before I go to bed. I do nonfiction in the morning, and more of the motivational stuff that makes me want to work and gives me ideas to do things, rather than thinking about that right before bed like I used to. So that change has been really helpful, doing fiction before bed. I do the Prey series, which is kind of like murder thriller, from like, it's like the CIA, FBI side type of murder thriller type of novels. And then I would say that the yoga with, I told you I was rereading Stillness is Key. So those two have really been helping me. Like even when I go to training, I feel like sometimes what you said is like that, like aggressive man testosterone driven energy of being like, fuck it, I'm not a bitch, I gotta grind it out. I used to use that as fuel a lot. And then I feel like that's what kind of pushes that burnout. It's like you're using that extra energy to do it, rather than now I go into it really still. And I keep repeating it to myself before going to training, like just find peace, like feel peaceful, feel like you do when I told you I hit kind of like a high when I was stretching a couple of weeks ago. And then for the rest of the day, I was just unbothered by anything because I found my mind to be so stilled. I got into the breathing where I literally thought about nothing. And then I left it at that for the rest of the day. Like nothing bothered me. Everything was just like in and out. I registered what was happening, and then just kept moving. I didn't judge it for anything. As corny as it sounds, like that's what the teachers usually tell you to do, and you're like, yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, it actually happened, right? And now I try to implement that same thing when I'm in training. And man, when I do it, and I don't care that much, and I don't bring that like energy into sparring, into clinching, into everything I do, man, I'm so much more efficient. I'm so much sharper. I have more fun. It's more enjoyable. I had that last hard sparring session that I talked about, and like I felt almost untouchable in it. I did 5 rounds, and all I told myself going into the 5 rounds was just flow with it and like be at peace no matter what happens. So whether I got hit or I didn't get hit or things were going well or they weren't going well, all I was looking for is the openings and like how to hit it fast and how to stay in a state of flow. And it worked really well.
That's I think that's a good point too, because like I think it's a balance. We're talking about burnout, right? Trying to avoid burnout. I think it's a balance of like having a good structure, like we were talking about with like Don Heatrick's programming and just like with life and like a schedule. But it's also really important to have flow and not force the structure on yourself. Just because you're supposed to be doing a certain thing doesn't mean you should be doing it, and be able to make adjustments on the fly and just kind of just let it all be, just like be like water, if you will, you know. And I think that that's great that you're able to develop this type of mindset where you're just able to just literally go with the flow and not be or be objective about what you're doing, and be able to be the observer and not judge anything that you're doing, but just be like, oh, I did that. That was interesting. Now I'll move on to the next thing. And I think that's something that we can always be improving on in regards to just like not judging the things that we do on a regular basis. Cause like
Mm,
we're both super hypercritical of ourselves. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because like we're never satisfied, but at the same time, that helps us push to new levels. But in order to avoid this type of burnout where we just stress ourselves out so much by trying to always put pressure on ourselves to just be better and just keep growing and just keep improving, sometimes just like just be and just do, and don't have any rhyme or reason behind it. Just do it because you enjoy doing it. And so it's good that you have like these leisure activities. I think it's really important for everyone to have these outside activities that aren't related to anything. For me, recently, it's just been I've been liking like running. I mean, obviously, it's like related to
mhm,
Muay Thai and stuff, but like I just enjoy running because it's like it's beautiful where I live. I can run near the beach, and like it's just a way for me to get out of my own head and just like be. In addition to that, I really enjoy. We've been watching movies more recently, or either getting into like a TV series of some sort, but putting our phones away, because like it's so easy to like be watching something but also be on your phone at the same time, which is it's so silly when you think about it. But like we've actually been able to like sit and enjoy movie nights together, which is something that we usually don't do. Sometimes we'll have a movie on in the background and we'll be on the computers doing work and bullshit and stuff. But now we're trying to just make everything we do with more intention. We're trying to put our phones away. And that's another thing too. I think social media has this really uh really, how do I word this? It just makes you feel shitty most of the time because you see everyone else putting in the work. It's all the highlights of people, right? You see everyone training, everyone fighting, everyone accomplishing goals. Meanwhile, obviously, it's social media, so a lot of it is just the highlights of people's lives, because that's what gets the likes. And once you talk about like negative stuff on social media, then people are like, oh, why are you talking about bad stuff anyway? And so it's like this weird social media is a weird world, and I think it's gotten even more weird with 2020 and COVID and everything. I don't know why, but it definitely has changed, and I've definitely avoided it a lot more recently, because when I find myself just constantly checking my phone and seeing what everyone else is doing, then I'm inundated with everyone else's thoughts and opinions and not my own, and I hate that.
mm,
And so I make sure like the first part of the day, I do not check social media, because if the first thing you do is wake up and check your fucking phone, instantly other people's thoughts and opinions and perspectives are in your head,
mhm,
not your own. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of the morning routine, having this like self-care time where you're doing your own movement, you're doing your own meditation, you're doing your own self study. And then after you have this time for yourself, then you could fuck around and go on. But I find that if I'm not doing this morning routine where I have this time for myself, and I'm constantly just checking my phone first thing and just habitually doing it as like a fucking addict would be trying to chase like crack or something, then I realize I get to burnout a lot faster because I'm not giving myself any of that stillness that is so key, according to Ryan Holiday, right? And so it's really important for you to also be able to catch yourself when you're getting into these habits and vices that kind of take you away from the mindfulness and the present of the day to day, because it's really easy to distract yourself. And when you're distracting yourself, you're not really recharging the way that you need to be recharging most of the time. Like when I'm watching a movie or when Paul's reading, that's distracting ourselves, but we're mindfully present of what we're doing still. Like especially when it comes to reading, like in order to read, you have to. That's all you can be. You can't be doing anything else while you're reading. You know what I mean? And it's like when I'm watching the movie, that's all that we're doing. When we're on our phones, it's crazy. I was watching South Park not too long ago, and like the Buddha box that Cartman has, where it's like this box that you put on your head, and it has your cell phone
I saw
screen in
this.
front of you, and you put out the outside world because you have anxiety, right? Is essentially when they take the perspective of like inside the box, what Cartman is doing. Oh, let me go check this. Oh, did I get a message from this? Oh, what about this? Or they like this? Oh, let me go back here now because I haven't checked this for 5 seconds. And like that's exactly like how I use it too. And then I realized that I'm like, holy fuck, like I'm just like on the phone for no reason, just going back and forth from the same apps, refreshing my email, refreshing my feed to see if there's anything else that I can get a dopamine rush on. And then meanwhile, I'm not living in my life like at all. A lot of people live for social media as opposed to living for life and then kind of just sharing it on social media. And I'm trying to do a little bit of a 180 on that as well, because I've just noticed that a lot of people are just like they're caught up on trying to make social media their life, right? And like that is like that is who I am. But meanwhile, it's just a part of you. It's just a part of me, and it's really easy. I mean, like it's easy for me to get overwhelmed with the amount of like comments and shit that I see. And like I do try to get back to as many comments as I can, as I'm sure you do as well. But I try to even do that in a mindful, calculated way where I'm not just like constantly checking the comments throughout the day. No, I have like one or two time periods, maybe in the morning and at night, where I check comments and then I respond on the comments. And I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I think it was important to kind of talk about when it comes to burnout, right? A lot of it ends up being like a mental thing. And if you're not giving yourself this time to just be with yourself and to like enjoy being bored, I think people are so afraid of being bored and being with themselves that they're constantly trying to find this fix through their cell phones and through social media and stuff. And it's important for you to be able to fucking turn off your phone, put on do not disturb mode, and just like be bored, be staring at the fucking wall for a little bit. Like just be with your thoughts. Like a lot of people don't even know what the fuck they're thinking most of the time because they're just thinking what social media is telling them to think. And so that's my speech. Drop the mic.
Yeah, that fix it never comes, does it? We look for it on what you just said with boredom and trying to maybe find some type of affirmation from others, like, okay, if this gets enough likes, I'll feel good. But
Yeah.
that never lasts. That fix never comes. And at the end of the day, pretty much everything you explained, everything comes down to what we allow in our lives. And even if we allow ourselves to get on social media and these negative things come, we can judge it as that, like, oh man, these people are being very toxic, or they're talking about politics, when there's certain other things that maybe they should be talking about to be more positive. But all these things are just self-placed judgments, right? And it's what we're allowing to happen ourselves. Like, we're the ones that went on there. We're the ones that are looking at this person's profile, or we're allowing ourselves to take this information in. So at the end of the day, the blame is always on us. The responsibility is ours to what environment we set and what we allow ourselves, and what type of information to infiltrate our mind. That's one. And then also the views of it and how we judge it. Going back to what you were saying is like being a little bit more hypercritical of ourselves and how we judge things. Because what you said, when we first wake up in the morning and we look at a comment or we look at a post, then we just start placing judgment on it, right? And then that takes time. That one, it takes up time to look at it, and then it takes up time throughout the rest of your day where you're placing judgment on something someone else said that you probably won't see for the rest of your life, possibly. You know what I mean? And you're having these self arguments. It's like one of my favorite memes is like my shampoo bottles when I'm winning an argument in my head in the shower, and they're like, ooh. It's always when you have those arguments in the shower, right? And man, it's so true because that meme is so funny and relatable because everyone's had that moment, right? And it's all based on what they read. And we talked about this a few episodes ago. Like, yeah, sometimes I literally just sit there and think about like, whoa. I stop myself and I go, would I even be thinking about any of this? None of this would be real in my head if I never opened up my phone and thought about it. I'd never be worried about this or this message. And I also had what you said is like getting back to comments, getting back to people, because you do want to connect with everyone. And I recently, I think 2 people this happened with in the past few weeks or so, where they messaged me because I didn't message back within a certain amount, whatever they allotted the time for me to respond to them was. And most of the time it's like people in the request folder that is hard to see. It's full of spam. And then they get like really mean and aggressive. Like, hey man, I'm a big fucking supporter. Thanks a lot for not responding when like I really needed this question. And it's something that you can, Google, of course. And then most of the time what I realized when someone gets back like that, like the people usually that understand are the people you want in your circle anyways. That's what you want to allow in. And the people that don't, most of the time when you look at it, is the people that aren't even really worth your answer that tend to respond in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just everyone, especially with just the way the world is, immediate gratification is such a thing. And so like it's like the person who like texts you and they expect you to text them right back kind of thing. Like it's just always has to be on their time. But either way, hopefully this we kind of touch a base on a lot of different areas of what can cause burnout. So hopefully this gives you a little bit perspective on like how to avoid it. Ultimately, I think some of the main keys and takeaways from this is find stillness, right? And read the book by Ryan Holiday. Definitely a highly recommended book. Paul's rereading it. I've read it twice as well, and it really helped during a time of burnout. Another really good book, especially when you're feeling like depressed or anxious, is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. That's a phenomenal book as well. And that books don't usually make me laugh out loud. That book actually made me laugh out loud a bunch of times. And it's definitely one of my top 3 books now because of how it just resonated with me in a time that I really needed a book to like resonate with me and to like speak to me in a way that's different than most other books. So hopefully,
kind of a genius, right? Like the way it's written, I honestly avoided the book because I've always hated the guy that was like, bro, you just gotta not give a fuck. And like it's usually people that literally don't give a fuck in a way where it's kind of self-destructive. Mm-hmm. So when I was reading it, when I saw the title, it almost turned me off. I'm like,
yeah, when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I get it.
And then when I started reading into it, I was like, oh, this is very clever because he actually makes a point for caring, but it's like how to do it objectively and like how not to.
Fucks to give,
Yes.
All right, so we'll jump into the Q&A section. We got a bunch of questions. We'll be doing this just for like 10 or 15 minutes, so we'll try to get as many questions as we can in. I'll start from the top. Art Sullivan, I'm assuming you're asking another platform off of Facebook. I'm assuming you're talking with the Fighters Body membership. I'm working on a different forum. That will take some time though. Let's go into Raka. Been doing Muay Thai for 4 to 5 months. Started at 175 centimeters. I'd imagine you probably stay at the same height unless I don't know how old you are. 97 kilos. You're down to 83. That's incredible success story in its own right, but you've never built muscle. How can you do that and lose fat and build muscle? You don't like weightlifting. My advice is like weightlifting. Learn to like weightlifting. If you want to build muscle, that's going to be a big part of it. Body weight exercises and everything can definitely help. But when it comes down to it, the most efficient and best way to do it is going to be weightlifting and checking out Don Heatrick. Do you have any words of wisdom, Paul?
If you don't like weightlifting, at least enjoy the results of what it brings you. If that is your goal, to build muscle, to kind of fill out that space that you're losing in fat. And nothing's locked my body into place to complement Muay Thai. Being a tall, lanky guy, things kind of like fly around the place, right? Nothing's ever like linked it together and made it into a unit the way that like proper strength and conditioning has. And I think if you do it the right way, where you're not like getting out of your car and screaming in pain and agony, and like Sean said, following Don's stuff, then I think you can learn to enjoy it.
Boom. Cedric wants to know. Oh, please include my question. No, that's the wrong one.
We did it.
Who are your favorite MMA fighters?
Hmm.
I'll say I love Cowboy Cerrone for his attitude. I also was watching him back in the WEC days, and I really loved his style.
Yeah.
I still love his style and everything, and I really appreciate him as a fighter. And he's just really vulnerable and transparent with like his emotions leading up to fight. So I can really appreciate that. I love Justin Gaethje as well. Super exciting, awesome, humble guy. He just loves to fight and throw down. And those are two of the ones that come to the top of my head. I do like Conor McGregor. I liked him as he was, just like I like John Jones when they were like climbing to the top. And then once they got to the top, power.
In a hipster way. You like them in a hipster way.
Yeah,
when
I like them
the others
before
didn't.
they were cool, before they were fucking champions. But I've watched Conor McGregor's documentaries and stuff, and it definitely shines a light on a lot of things. And like I really I resonate with a lot of the mindset stuff that he speaks on as well. And although I don't agree with a lot of his marketing tactics, if you will, I do respect him as a fighter, and I do like his fighting style too, because it's very dynamic, and he does finish fights. I'm really excited for his fight against Dustin Poirier, and I gotta say Khalil too, who will be interviewing next week. He's climbed the rankings to my favorite MMA fighter as well, because his story is so unique in the way that he's been able to overcome a lot. He was really out of shape, overweight, felt like just like a bum growing up, but then he watched The Ultimate Fighter and like decided he was going to be the Ultimate Fighter. And then sure enough, he's in the UFC right now. He'll be fighting on the Conor McGregor card. One of his fights that really I liked him before, because I watched The Ultimate Fighter season that he was on, and I liked his personality and his fighting style. But when he fought Eric Anders, it was just like game over. It was after he trained in Thailand just for a little bit, but it made such a huge difference. And like the way he represented Muay Thai in the ring, I was like, fuck yeah, I like this guy. So what about you, Paul? Who are some of your favorite MMA fighters?
This is going to sound like really biased because these are all strikers, like Muay Thai stylists, but Barboza is probably my favorite. And a part of it,
switch kicks.
A part of it is that he throws that switch kick lightning fast, like the proper fucking way to do it. And he does it at the right time. Like it's when you're stepping to that side, you got nowhere else to go and you can't do anything but eat it. He's very sharp, he's very technical, and then he explodes at the right times. He's so versatile with all his strikes. Like I really enjoy the guys that are versatile with the striking. They have a lot of different weapons that you're looking out for, and they're exciting. And his lost, I think, 5 out of his last 6 fights or something like that. And I don't care. Like those are the guys I like, is the ones that keep going in there and they're like, bro, this is my style. This is what I do. And I think he won his last 1 or 2. which I'm really happy about. And it's like you root for those guys because they come so close. He had like 4 split decisions, and that's relatable to me. So usually the guys I can feel for him, Aldo, especially when he was WEC
Aldo,
days, I
fuck
was
yeah.
watching him. Aldo, I wish he would low kick again. Um,
Oh, well, I saw a video recently that really resonated with me. I want to mention it real quick. It was someone posting about like if you're an amateur champion, they'll say how you're not a pro champion. If you're a pro champion, they'll say how you're not a UFC champion. If you're a UFC champion, they'll say how you haven't defended your belt. If you defend your belt, they'll say how you haven't done it for the most times in UFC history. And,
yeah,
and they talked about like Aldo, like when Aldo like lost to McGregor,
phenom.
washed up, he's done like whatever. Meanwhile, he's still at the top. He's still like in the top 10, I believe, right now. And like before
I believe
that,
his like number 3.
yeah, one of the best ever. And it's so easy how people, or so it's sad how easily people can just like throw away years and years of complete domination because of one fight. And there will always be critics when it comes down to it too. And like it's that whole quote about like it's not about the critic, it's about the gladiator in the fucking stadium. So I just wanted to mention that because that stuck with me too. Because like I feel like you and I are always trying to, well, we're always trying to prove to ourselves like how good we are, but we're also trying to prove to critics how good we are too. But meanwhile, like there's going to be critics no matter how like Tom Brady has critics. All the best people in the world at what they do, they're still getting judged and saying that they could be doing better. And so it's just something
Yeah.
to keep in mind as you move forward. But I just wanted to speak on that a little bit.
Even if you're the best, like LeBron James right now, like, oh, you could be the best in the last 10 years,
I am Michael Jordan, yo.
but he ain't Michael Jordan. It's like, man, you're comparing me to someone that doesn't play anymore, that doesn't fight anymore. It's like he'll never be that. It's like I can't be my own person. And to add to the list, I guess you can't miss Adesanya. He is such a high IQ fighter, and for someone to be able to go from the biggest arenas of striking to the biggest arena of MMA, and there's been a few guys that have tried it, but not many have been successful. And I feel like people kind of forget that. Like they're like, oh man, his dominating right now and he rose to the top, and like how hard that is to do in just a few years when you were just fighting kickboxing before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, he has a huge striking advantage, but to be able to keep it on the feet against all these guys like Brunson and all these guys that he just ended up starching when everyone counted him out. That's super impressive. So I like that underdog story as well. And whatever people say about his confidence, I think it's kind of earned.
Hell yeah, it is. Next, we got a couple of questions related to kicks. This is the main one. Any tips on being better at throwing multiple kicks? Because we have Ibrahim asking how to maintain balance, throwing 10 kicks in a row with good speed and good power. And JW was also asking the same question about throwing 10 kicks in a row. What's your advice, Paul?
You have to lock the body on impact. So the first kick is going to be like you would throw any other kick. And then you want to keep that shoulder forward from the side that you're kicking from. So if you can picture this, close your eyes right now, you throw the first kick. You're not going to reset your upper body all the way back and kind of keep swinging. You're going to keep that shoulder forward, and then you're just going to skip, and you're going to stutter your feet and kick up, kick up, kick up, kick up. And every time you make impact, you pretty much lock the body in. So sometimes you see people, they lose balance because after they kick, they allow their body to kind of like pivot around a lot rather than just like locking it in on impact. Every time you make impact, you just lock it in, lock it in, lock it in, lock it, like loose, like you lock it in and then you let go, lock it in, bounce, let go, and do that repeatedly over and over, chopping the front hand.
Yeah, a lot of it just comes down to experience and put it in the reps. I sucked at it for a while, and until you just keep sucking at it until you finally figure out like how to kind of do it. And like it will always be a work in progress. You can always do it better. But I think a lot of it just comes down to putting in the work. But Paul gave some really good technical advice, so hopefully that resonates with you. Next, we got Ashanti. Something about my baby. It just makes me think of Ja Rule. Anyway, I'm sure you get that a lot, Ashanti. I apologize. So I've never done Muay Thai. I never tried Muay Thai and even started fighting or training before. What are some tips? Is it okay to get started with the process of breaking into health and training, or whether it's okay to just get started? I think it's just good to just join the gym, because like the next thing she asked is okay to just join a gym and get a trainer or start by myself? I think the best thing to do is ideally you join a gym and you get a trainer, and so this way you have different eyes on you, showing you the proper technique and everything. If it's not available, then obviously you can train by yourself. You can use our YouTube channels and all of our training resources to learn the proper stance and the basic techniques, but uh, nothing's going to over, what am I trying to say, Paul? Nothing's going to be better than just doing it in person. And so essentially, if you can go to the gym, is the best place to start. And yeah, just take it from there. I know it's intimidating to think about joining like a fight gym or a Muay Thai gym, but 9 times out of 10, the atmosphere is very friendly. People want you to join. People want to share the sport and their knowledge with you. And so take the leap. 2021 is right around the corner, and it's a good time to start Muay Thai for sure.
Yeah, I think people always make things out to be worse in their head than they truly are. You know, like once you get in, you're like, man, I've been waiting for this, all this. That's the main thing, is don't miss out on all these months of not doing it. Just get in there so you don't have to be like, oh man, I could have done this 3 months ago. Look where I'd be looking at the person that did it 3 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me. Chris Howell wants to know how many times you train strength a week. I do twice a week. I think, Paul, you do twice a week as well.
Yeah, I do twice a week on these fight camps. I'll be honest when I say that it's been rough with the injuries and like with the clinching and things feeling off, but I need to get that 1 day a week. I missed there was a few days where I did a few weeks where I did only one, and then 1 week I didn't do it, and everything got fucked up. That's when I'm talking about my shoulders not balancing the body out. Because if you think about it, without strength and conditioning, you're in the gym punching and doing push-ups and kicking and doing push-ups and punching and doing and clinching with your shoulders forward and shoulders and traps coming up to block clinch entries. Everything is just shrugged over, right? With that posture. So we need something to balance the body out and pull it all back to get good posture so we don't get injured.
Boom. Next we'll do we'll do 3 more questions. Sound
Okay.
good? 3
Perfect.
more questions.
Thank you guys for sending these in.
These are great questions. Sorry we're not gonna be able to get to all of them, but show up next time and maybe we will. Leslie wants to know, started training southpaw and surprised that it feels natural. I mean, even better than my usual stance. Doesn't mean I'm southpaw. What's the advantage of southpaw? The advantage of southpaw is like humongous. Like it's the best. And like I transitioned to southpaw. I made my transition not too long ago, you know, and happy with the way it turned out. And so southpaw definitely opens up a whole new ball game. I mean, you have so many different angles, so many different combinations and strikes that are going to work better against orthodox fighters. And if you think about it this way, you go to a gym and you spar. 9 out of 10 people you're going to spar are going to be orthodox, and one's going to be southpaw. If you're southpaw, you're going to be sparring mainly orthodox fighters, and you'll barely see any southpaws. So just think about the amount of reps that you get against orthodox fighters compared to the amount of reps that orthodox fighters get against southpaws. And it's just a different game. It's just a fucking different game. If you can learn how to fight southpaw, I would definitely advise it. If it feels more natural, then fucking go for it. If you can fight from both stances, that's great too. I think it's good to just be a dynamic striker in as many ways possible. We talk about Adesanya. He seamlessly switches from both sides, able to throw every single strike with just as much speed and as much power. And so if you're able to diversify and be comfortable throwing from every stance, the more the better.
Yeah, I feel like eventually I need to put together a southpaw guide, because I wish I knew all the tricks that I know now. Like people would tell me like, oh, you just got to step to the outside angle. And like,
That's
and
the
then
one.
everything else figures itself out. And it wasn't until so much trial and error until I figured out like really what these southpaw angles are. And man, they're great. They're amazing. And I was just gonna say exactly what you said. It's just math. You know, you're just getting a ton of repetition against orthodox strikers, and they're just not used to you.
Mhm.
So you just have that advantage of repetition and just knowing what that southpaw game is. So hopefully you have a good coach or someone that has studied southpaws. If not, then I
Study
would try to,
Georgia Petrosian.
yeah.
Study that motherfucker. He is the best. And like he knows ways. Him, Sanchai, Yats, and Cly study southpaws and see what they do. And a lot of them do the same fucking things. Left cross, left kick. Left cross, left right hook, left kick. Left kick, left kick. Left kick, left knee. It's just like
Yeah, and then you just want to look at the main thing is like looking like when those things happen. When do they choose to use them? Because that's, I mean, you'll think like he just left kicks over and over and over again, but not a lot of people can do that. Even if they're southpaw, they don't know how to do that. It looks like it's just left kicking. So what you want to look out for is like, oh, when does he do it? Is it when the opponent steps in? What angle? And then those like little nuances, and then you'll have a big advantage, Leslie.
yes. All right, Mark. Been training Muay Thai for 1 month. As a content creator, is there room for a newbie to put out quality content and build a pillar? I haven't done much search query research yet. I mean, there's no reason not to start. I mean, it's easy to feel like you're behind or that there's other people doing it already and that kind of stuff. But I started really early on in my Muay Thai journey. And the one piece of advice that I could give you is if you do it, just stay fucking consistent, man. Just like decide you're going to do it. I see so many people who start off um, on fire. 3 months, 6 months, they're fucking killing it, putting out content every goddamn day. And then you never hear from them again. Um, talk about burnout and everything, right? Try to create a systematic approach to putting out content. And as someone who's in the beginning stages, I think it's really important to be talking about a lot of the challenges and obstacles that you're facing, a lot of the things that you're learning as a beginner. I know me personally, I've kind of lost a little sight of what beginners are going through because I'm more advanced now because I've been doing it for 10 years. And so it's harder for me to put myself in a beginner shoe. And so you have an advantage by being a beginner to know what beginners are looking for and what they're trying to accomplish. And so if you're able to turn it around like that, like, oh, I've only been doing it for 1 month. Yeah, that's great. A lot of people are just starting.
MuayThaiNoob.com.
MuayThaiNoob.com. There you go. All right. We just created the brand for you. We'll get you on the podcast, blow you up. You'll be the next big thing. There you go.
Yeah, man. It's definitely become a lot more saturated. So you just have to look at it like, why do you want to do it? And then, like who your audience is going to be. It doesn't mean that, you're going to put out expert like courses for professionals to follow, but maybe you're from a town where no one else really has like is something to do that's as exciting as Muay Thai, or anyone in their town that has done something as cool as Muay Thai is, right? So I mean that's kind of how I started, because I was logging all my skateboarding and snowboarding footage and my friends hanging out, and we'd put those things together into edits. Then when I started Muay Thai, that's just what I started doing. At the time, fortunately, there was like a few people doing it. It was like Sean, and there was like maybe a couple other random guys. I never heard of them, but everything was like to my family, my friends, to like my immediate circles. And they're like, holy shit, you're going to go to Thailand. Now it feels like everyone is kind of like doing these things, but it doesn't matter. Like, again, like judgment of what, like perspective. Like now we get to look at someone on the other side of the world and they're always doing better than us. It's like, keep your circle small, and just look at the people that you want to impact, and log your experiences that way. So MuayThaiNoob.com. Best of luck.
Boom. I just have to show this comment. Sean, you sexy beast. I will catch you and clinch you into a bush one day. I don't even know what it means, but bring it on. Bring it on. All right, one more question. There are some questions that I was trying to go in order, but there's been so many comments that I'm not able to go in order, so I have to skip a couple. So I apologize if I'm skipping your question. We're trying to do our best though. So Let's see. I'll try to find a good question. All right. We got another Sean right here. Sean Manion, can you learn striking at home with instructionals like you can with BJGA, or will I just end up learning incorrect form and damaging my body? Well, like we kind of said before, it's definitely better to be able to uh, get in person experience and guidance as much as you can. But if you don't have that option and you do need to train by yourself, there are great instructionals out there from like I think they're the Muay Thai guys. They do pretty good content and they kind of know what they're doing. But when it comes to you learning, it's important to like video yourself. And then we have Facebook groups and online communities where you can post your training and people can give you some feedback. And maybe we're even in the community to give you feedback as well. And that's one of the better ways to do it if you don't have a trainer. But like I said, if you can't find a trainer, you please do.
Boom.
Boom. All right, guys. So thanks so much. Sorry again, we didn't get around to all the questions. We appreciate you so much. We'll be doing this again next week. We'll be interviewing Khalil Roundtree of the UFC, who's training at Powerhouse in Phuket, Thailand. He'll be fighting on the January 23rd card with Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Like I said, really inspirational story. Really cool dude. I'm excited for that conversation. Any last words, Paul?
Make sure you catch us next week. The Muay Thai guys, always fun hanging out with you guys. Submit your questions. Come back next week. We're out.
Peace.